Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Jasmine Navarez, Digital Content Coordinator at Simulations Plus. I'll be hosting today's webinar behind the scenes, making sure we don't have any technical difficulties. In this webinar, Vice President of Product Neil Miller and Principal Scientific Product Specialist Noam Morningstar Kiwi will show you the new suite of AI-powered tools we recently released that are designed to enhance your modeling capabilities. Business Development Director Andrew Mueller will serve as our moderator today. A few housekeeping items before we begin. We take your privacy rights seriously. By registering for and attending this event or participating in the Q&A session, you're allowing us to contact you for follow-up. You may ask questions via the questions panel on your dashboard at any time. If you need assistance, please use the hand raise icon. We'll address all questions in the Q&A after the presentation. And I'll go ahead and pass things over to Andy.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you very much to our participants for carving some time out of your very busy schedules today. Introductions to our presenters. My good friend Neil Miller is a career DMPK scientist by training who developed a deep passion for PBPK modeling when he worked for GSK, where he spent 20 years before we stole him. He loved using GastroPlus so much, he joined the Simulations Plus team and is now the head product manager for GastroPlus. Noam Morningstar Kiwi first started working with GastroPlus during his graduate studies and has since joined Simulations Plus as an excellent PBPK modeling scientist and consultant. After several years building models for our industry partners and training our GastroPlus users, Noam now works full-time developing new features in the software. Thanks, gentlemen. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andy. So thank you everyone for joining us, as Andy said. So I'm going to start off with a presentation, and then Noam's going to take us through a demo. So let me start with the presentation. So we are here today to talk about how the new AI-powered tools can support your PBPK modeling. So these tools are within GastroPlus version 10.2. So in GastroPlus 10.2, as we say, the latest version of GastroPlus, we offer a suite of AI-powered tools that help you build quality models faster. So in this presentation, we'll go through GastroPlusChat, we'll go through Data Extractor, and we'll also go through AssessmentsPlus AI, which together combined result in GastroPlus GPT. So GastroPlus GPT is GastroPlusChat, Data Extractor, and AssessmentsPlus AI. Before we go through the details of the tools, it's worth talking about data privacy, as we get a lot of questions on this topic. So GastroPlus GPT does not train on the data provided and does not retain the data provided either, but it does pass through OpenAI's API, so it is subject to their terms and conditions. In terms of the licenses, both GastroPlusChat and Data Extractor are part of your base GastroPlus license, whereas the AssessmentsPlus AI is for use with the additional AssessmentsPlus module. And we will go through AssessmentsPlus as well, so you can see that module in its full glory. Another frequently asked question is, how do you access the tools from within GastroPlus itself, from within the GUI, the graphical user interface? So to access the GastroPlus GPT, you would go to the Help view in GastroPlus 10.2 and then click on the GastroPlus GPT button. That would then take you to all three of the tools, or conversely, or alternatively, you can go to the AssessmentsPlus view and then click on Launch AssessmentsPlus AI, and that will launch GastroPlus GPT from there as well. The first time that you access GastroPlus GPT, you will need to sign up. So sign up to request the access. So the big question, why should you use the AI-powered tools that we are now providing with GastroPlus 10.2? Well, there are many practical challenges facing a PBPK, a PBBM modeler. So you've got extracting data from diverse sources, you've got configuring complex models, you've got troubleshooting errors, and translating results into decisions. But in addition to that, to become an expert, it is suggested that it takes 10,000 hours of practice. Well, the AI tools in GastroPlus help you overcome the practical challenges and effectively shortcut the 10,000 hours rule, as AssessmentsPlus lets you tap into the combined knowledge and experience of our world-class PBPK and PBPM scientists. So put simply, you should use the AI-powered tools because they facilitate scientific thinking. Now, if we look at the three tools individually, we'll go through GastroPlusChat first. Why should you use GastroPlusChat? Well, let's first look at what it does. So it gives you 24/7 advice for any GastroPlus related question. So of course, we could ask GastroPlusChat itself, what is it? So if we were to do that, you would type in what is GastroPlusChat, and then that would return the answer that GastroPlusChat is an AI-powered assistant to support your GastroPlus work with the simulation engine. So it then gives you the main features and capabilities such as instant technical support, documentation, interactive Q&A, visualization, guidance, export options, tutorial integration. All of this comes as part of GastroPlusChat. So if we go back to the first question, why should you use GastroPlusChat? The answer is pretty simple. It provides help. So what we can do is look at a couple of examples of the features of GastroPlusChat. So the first one is technical support. So you could, as I've done here, I've typed in what does the PPS module do? So that's a new module in GastroPlus 10.2. If you're not aware of what that module does, you would simply type into GastroPlusChat, and then it would return its primary function is to represent the surface area of drug substance available for dissolution in a given formulation based on the observed in vitro dissolution release data for a specific drug product batches. So it tells you the function, but not only that, it gives you the key features of that module as well. So you've got that 24/7 technical support. Another example would be, for some of us, we're visual learners, and we have a whole suite of videos, YouTube videos that help you use GastroPlus and highlight the individual functionality. So you could think, okay, is there a video for the metabolism and transporter module? So if you type that into GastroPlusChat, it would return the link to that video. So I could click on there and watch the video. Before that, I could look at the highlights, the key points, the details that are covered by that video. So you can ask for video requests as well as technical questions. Most of the support questions that we get are, how do I? And now you can ask that how do I question 24/7, every day of the week, every hour, without the need to contact us. So here we have an example of how do I create a GastroPlus or a template in GastroPlus 10.2. So those of you new to GastroPlus 10.1 or 10.2 may not have come across templates before, and this is a real time-saving feature of the last two versions of GastroPlus, where you create a template and it only has in it the assets that you need in your projects. So with a simple click of a button, you're creating a project with all of the assets that you need, your formulations, dosing schedules, physiology schedules, etc. So if I was to type that question into GastroPlusChat, that would return simple step-by-step instructions on how to implement and create a template within GastroPlus 10.2. So that's GastroPlusChat. Now going to switch gears and talk about the data extractor. So again, the question, why should you use the data extractor? Well, to answer that question, let's look at what the data extractor does. So quite well, put simply, it extracts data from diverse sources. Yet again, we could use GastroPlusChat to type in the question, what is data extractor? And then it would return that it's designed to digitize and extract structured data from images of tables and plots. And then it lists the main functions and capabilities of the data extractor. So you can see table detection, plot digitization, etc. So all of these features, put simply, save you time. So you're getting help with GastroPlusChat, and with data extractor, you're saving time. So I've got a couple of screenshots now of how data extractor works for plots. So I took this plot and then I loaded this plot into data extractor, and then you get the message returned that it's identified a plot. Then you would click on the extract plot data, and then it would return a table of the extracted data and then the reconstructed plot of those data. Now, you could download that data to a text file and then use that in your GastroPlus projects if you've taken this, say, an image from a manuscript, for example. Now, we all know that when we digitize, sometimes we don't digitize the number quite close enough. And it's the same with the automatic digitization as well. There may be 1 or 2 data points that you're not quite happy with. And so what you can do, you can enable editing. So once it's digitized, you're free then to edit the data to make sure that it's a closer match. Most of the time it's fine, but just highlighting that we have this functionality where if you weren't happy with the digitization, you could fine tune that. So here on the example here, there's a few points that aren't quite up to my satisfaction. So I then enable the editing and update those points. You can also load a table into Data Extractor. So here we've got a table of data. So if I was to load that into the Data Extractor, it would identify that as a table. Now, tables are really quite a boring task and very prone to error when you're transcribing those values. So with the extraction of the data, that will obviously save a lot of time. And again, you can download the text file. And here I did that, and then I loaded the data back into Excel where the original data was, and then I calculated the ratios. As you can see with the table, we've got a 100% perfect match. Obviously, you can do that by visual inspection, but just highlighting here, green, we're good to go. We've got the perfect digitization, not perfect digitization, the perfect extraction of the data from the table. So that's Data Extractor. Now I'm going to move on to the third tool, the AssessmentsPlus AI. But before I do that, I do want to introduce AssessmentsPlus. So that is a new module into GastroPlus 10.2. And this is like having an entire team of world-class PBPK or PBBM scientists sitting next to you and coaching you through your own model building. So the compound assessment effectively kickstarts your modeling by providing advice from the get-go. So with the click of a button here, the Assess button, you'll get compound classification and advice on all components of absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. You might ask the question, well, why do I want to do that before I model? Well, if we look at this paper here, I think it's been cited nearly 150 times since 2019. It highlights that you identify gaps and major sensitivities, enabling a timely definition of essential experiments and prioritization of fit-for-purpose resources to support the model development and preclinical verification if you're predicting first in human. So doing this QSPR, so the quantitative structure property relationship combined with PBPK compound assessment really guides your modeling before you start. So it's very, very valuable. AssessmentsPlus, as well as a compound assessment, also includes a simulation assessment. So here we've got multiple modes that really kind of turbocharge your modeling by providing technical advice up to and including fitting the observed data. So no stone is left unturned in looking at that simulation. So for an experienced modeler, you can let the software go and look at every component, excuse me, of your model. And for a new user, it effectively provides on-the-job training in the multiple disciplines that underpin PBPK and PBBM. So it's very advantageous, AssessmentsPlus, for both experienced users, so you don't miss anything, and for new users to do that coaching. So basically, every modeler wins, and the resulting modeling can be used to drive faster times to markets for drugs. So all of this, again, is just with a simple click of a button here on the Assess button. So we've got this set up for the improved fit to observe data. And when you do select a mode, it gives you a description underneath here. So oral CP time data is available. We're going to improve the fit of the simulated profile to the observed data. But we do have other modes. So we've got descriptive analysis. So it will give you a description of the components, the ADME components driving the simulation. We also have a drug product improvement mode as well, which has got different development stages of lead selection, preclinical, clinical, generic bioequivalence, and generic 505(b)(2). And with each of those modes, you do get the description of what the aim of that or the function is of that mode. So here we're looking at the improved fit to observe data. So we're still within the graphical user interface at this point. So in the GUI, so we've got a traffic light system. So when you run this simulation assessment, it's red, it's telling you there's a problem. So if we look here, the AUC ratio is under predicted and we're told by how much. But then the real game changer is that about all of the parameters that might be the root cause of this poor prediction. You could spend a lot of time trying to drill down into what is causing the poor prediction. So here we've got the under prediction of the CP time profile. The AssessmentsPlus module returns straight away that it's limited by passive permeability. So if you were then to go to the runs, create an optimization run, selecting the permeability, then you would improve the simulation here. And you can see that's more than adequate. Where AssessmentsPlus AI comes in, it's like an enzyme. So I've kind of got this like a reaction here. So AssessmentsPlus is an enzyme in a chemical reaction. That means it accelerates the process. It's very important to note that you don't have to use AssessmentsPlus AI. It's an additional optional step with AssessmentsPlus, and we'll go into the benefits of that in the next few slides. So you can do everything with the graphical user interface. You can do it so much faster by using the AssessmentsPlus AI. But as I say, the program doesn't automatically take you to AssessmentsPlus AI and pass your information into the large language model. You're in control of that. So why should you use AssessmentsPlus AI? So there's three components to AssessmentsPlus AI. We have the AI summary, the AssessmentsPlus output, and the recommendations, and I'll go through those. But and this is what they look like within the graphical user interface. But the real reason, the simple answer to why you should use AssessmentsPlus AI is that it shortcuts that 10,000 hours rule to become an expert. It basically gives you all of the knowledge that's required to produce a quality PBPK or PBM model. So we'll now just go through a few slides looking at the various components, so the AI summary, AssessmentsPlus output, and the recommendations. So first we've got the AI summary. So that gives you a nice overview of the model itself. So this is really useful if you've got to share your modeling with a colleague or management. So it's giving you a summary of that simulation. So the model type, the results, and any advice. That's kind of the elevator pitch, if you like. It then goes into giving you a mechanistic breakdown with associated plots, but these are dependent on the type of simulation. So it's smart in the sense that it will only return things that are relevant to the simulation that you have run the simulation assessment on. So you'll get things like intraluminal dynamics, the permeation and absorption, the gut and liver extraction, distribution and clearance, etc. And you have the plots. So you've got the CP time profile here, which is very similar, the same coloring that's in the graphical user interface, but you've also got the semi-log plot as well. You've got here looking at paracellular versus transcellular absorption. So you could create all of these plots in the graphical user interface, but that would take the user some time. In the AssessmentsPlus AI, they're automatically created for you by default when you take your assessment into AssessmentsPlus AI. You also get an executive summary as well as the overview, and you can export a report. So you've got the export AI summary to a PDF. So a nice report of the model and what's driving the simulations and why there might be some poor predictions and how to improve those. The AssessmentsPlus output, and I must stress here that if you turn the LLM off, then it's not using any AI at this point. And it is simply converting the long list of really useful feedback from into the graphical user interface into discrete sections. So we've got all of this feedback type here, and it will combine the setup into one group, the actionable advice, the comparison, and the descriptive. So it's a lot easier to read because there's so much advice that's hard-coded into the software. So it organizes that in a much more digestible form within the AssessmentsPlus AI. But it doesn't have to use it doesn't use the LLM to do that, and you can turn that off. And then if you did that, you wouldn't get the AI summary, and you also wouldn't get the recommendations. You'd only get the AssessmentsPlus output. And I'm saving the best till last, and this is the jewel in the crown of AssessmentsPlus AI. So these AI recommendations, which also include the opportunity to use the chatbot to help you further understand and implement the advice. So we've got here 4 pieces of advice from this simulation, some recommendations, and then at the end, you can ask the chatbot. So if this isn't descriptive enough, if you need more help, then you will click on Ask the Chatbot. It's the same chatbot. We've not got 4 different chatbots, but here we're priming the chatbot to give you advice based on the response that's to the left-hand side of that. So you're getting specific advice without you having to type in anything. So if you just want more advice on the permeability, you would ask the chatbot about that. If you wanted on the distribution rates, you would ask the chatbot about that. If you had another question that wasn't covered by any of the recommendations above, obviously you could simply type in anything and get the advice. So this is the real crown jewel, or jewel in the crown, of the AssessmentsPlus AI, is that it gives you the recommendations to help you improve the modeling when you're working alone at any time of day. So that concludes the presentation. Hopefully I've not gone too far over time, and I'll hand over to Noam now for a demo of the GastroPlus GPT.
Thanks, Neil. So let's go ahead and take a look at how these tools work in practice.
Let's go ahead and switch to GastroPlus. So here we're going to take a look at the AssessmentsPlus module in 10.2, including both the compound and simulation assessments. We'll then move on to see how these assessments can be enhanced using the AssessmentsPlus AI web app.
The AssessmentsPlus module is like having a world-class PBPK, PBBM scientist sitting next to you and coaching you while you build your model. The embedded expert knowledge is based on hundreds of years of collective experience from multiple scientists. This is then further enhanced with our finely tuned large language model, which means your modeling journey just got much smoother and a whole lot faster. First, let's take a look at the project we will be using. This is a PBPK model from midazolam, which we use in several of our training examples. If we look at the assets we have in this project, we will see we have midazolam in vitro already added as a compound, where we have imported midazolam through ADMET Predictor and then filled in experimental properties where they are available. For example, we have updated the reference solubility, the pKa values, and the log P based on measured in vitro data. We have also added CYP3A4 to the enzyme table for the enterocyte and PBPK tissue locations, using the enzyme kinetics predicted by ADMET Predictor. We have added one formulation for an oral solution and one dosing schedule, using this formulation at a dose of 7.5 milligrams. While not shown here, we have also already added the corresponding CP time profile from the clinical study to the observed data view. We have one physiology here, a 21-year-old 73 kilogram human male, matching the average demographics of that clinical study. Pharmacokinetics have been set up for a PBPK model, and we have one physiology schedule corresponding to the aforementioned human physiology. Moving now to AssessmentsPlus, there are two types of assessments that can be run: a compound assessment and a simulation assessment. The compound assessment looks at the physical, chemical, and pharmacokinetic properties of a compound and the interactions of this compound with specified physiology at a given dose. It provides information about key properties and relevant settings and is intended to be run prior to running a simulation. In other words, the compound assessment highlights how the compound is expected to behave in a simulation. Conversely, the simulation assessment looks at what actually happened in the simulation and provides information on how to improve the fit to observed data or the drug product itself. We will now create a compound assessment, clicking on the Add button, ensuring the assessment type is set to compound, and naming it midazolam compound assessment. We can see that the compound, physiology, and dosing schedule are already set to the assets we reviewed earlier. If we had other assets we wanted to use in this assessment, such as a different species or a different dose, this is where we would select them. Since we want to use a PBPK model for midazolam, we will change the PK model type to physiologically based. Lastly, we will toggle Compare to ADMET Predictor on and select a structure file for midazolam. Doing this will include predictions from ADMET Predictor in the compound assessment, comparing the measured values we have included in the model with those predicted by ADMET Predictor and highlighting any discrepancies. In this file, there is only one structure, so midazolam is automatically selected as the comparator. However, if you have a structure file with multiple entries, you could select which one to use here. Now, we are ready to run the compound assessment. We can see that the feedback from the assessment is quickly provided in this table, organized by level, topic, and type. Descriptive feedback includes items like the BCS and DCS classification, as well as the ionization of the compound and the effects on solubility in the GI tract. The actionable feedback draws attention to the importance of the bile salt effect and the possibility of precipitation in the intestine. Our attention is also drawn to the possibility of nonlinear and saturable processes, highlighted by the feedback below covering metabolism. We can see here that our inclusion of CYP3A4 in the model aligns with predictions from ADMET Predictor in the comparison feedback. While we saw many of these parameters earlier when reviewing the assets in this project, you can see it all here in one place at the click of a button. Paired with these interpretations of how parameters interact, we now have a good idea of how this compound is expected to behave in a simulation, as well as the important points to which we should be paying close attention. We will now run such a simulation, using the same assets as we did in the compound assessment. We have already set the simulation up in this project, so we are ready to run it. Looking at the results, we can see that the fit is close, although the AUC and terminal phase appear to be somewhat over-predicted. Now, we could dig into the other key views, as well as deep view, to try and interrogate where this over-prediction is coming from. However, this is exactly the type of scenario for which we designed the simulation assessment. AssessmentsPlus will do this interrogation for you, identify possible reasons for the mismatch with observed data, and provide options for improving the fit. Going back to the AssessmentsPlus view, we will now create the simulation assessment. Once again, we will click the Add button, but this time we will set the assessment type to Simulation. We can name it Midazolam Simulation Assessment and click OK. You can see that the settings for the simulation assessment are different than those for the compound assessment. There are multiple modes in which the simulation assessment can be run, each with a set of sub-scenarios. The first mode, selected by default here, is drug product improvement. This mode is intended for use with oral simulations that are ready to be used for prospective predictions, and will provide advice on how the drug product and formulation can be improved. The advice is specific to the stage of development, with scenarios ranging from preclinical to generic bioequivalence. The second mode, which we will be using today, is Improve Fit to Observe Data, which provides advice on how to optimize simulation parameters and settings to better match the observed data. This is available for both IV and oral simulations and requires observed data to be mapped to the simulation. The scenario we will be using today is fitting the model to PO data, but it is worth noting that there are additional scenarios for fitting either distribution or clearance parameters to observe data for IV simulations. Lastly, there is a third mode for descriptive analysis. This mode can be used for any IV or PO simulation and simply provides a summary of what happened in the simulation without providing any advice. With the settings correctly set for our use case, we can go ahead and click Assess to run the simulation assessment. Right off the bat, we can see that the simulation assessment identifies that the AUC is overpredicted, as expected, highlighted by the red actionable feedback. This is followed by several more actionable items, identifying possible causes of the overprediction, as well as possible solutions. In this particular simulation, these include an underprediction of metabolic clearance, a misprediction of precipitation, and/or potential issues with the parameterization of dissolution and permeation. Further down, we have a series of pieces of descriptive feedback describing what happened in the simulation and providing the data to back up the actionable feedback. Now this information is incredibly useful and comprehensive, but it can be a little overwhelming, even if you manage it by clearing each row after reading it. So, you might be thinking, it would be nice to have it organized in a report-style format, perhaps with some graphics or tables. Well, that is where AssessmentsPlus AI comes in, our state-of-the-art AI tool for enhancing the output from AssessmentsPlus. As part of our GastroPlus GPT suite of web-based AI tools, AssessmentsPlus provides a report-friendly summary, visualization of key compound properties and simulation results, and a set of recommendations for improving your model or drug product. It also contains a chatbot, which can answer questions about your compound and simulation, or give instructions on how to implement any recommendations in GastroPlus. It is very important to note that AssessmentsPlus AI is an optional step, and the program does not take the feedback there automatically. You, as the user, are in full control of your data and can decide whether you want to have the feedback from AssessmentsPlus processed through the LLM. To use AssessmentsPlus AI, first we will copy the AssessmentsPlus output using the copy button, and then click the Launch AssessmentsPlus AI button. This will take us to the landing page for GastroPlus GPT, which is included with your GastroPlus license. If you don't yet have access to the online tools, you can follow the instructions on this page to get access. If you already have a login, then use this button up here to log in and proceed. This will take you to the dashboard, where you can first select Simulations Plus and then GastroPlus GPT. This takes us to the GastroPlus GPT suite of AI tools, which includes GastroPlusChat, AssessmentsPlus AI, and the Data Extractor. We will first navigate to AssessmentsPlus AI, and then paste the output we copied from AssessmentsPlus here. We can then click Run Assessment and let the AI do its thing. Once complete, we see that 3 sections are generated: AI Summary, AssessmentsPlus Output, and Recommendations. The AI Summary is exactly what it sounds like, an AI-generated summary of what happened in the simulation, what pharmacokinetic processes drove those results, and what the recommended actions are. This is organized into different sections that are specific to the simulation, or compound, and include numerous key plots that correspond to each section, providing the supporting data in line. This information can be downloaded as a report-ready PDF. Next, we have the AssessmentsPlus Output section. This section contains the exact same information as in the AssessmentsPlus module in GastroPlus, organized by feedback type and including relevant plots and tables. Lastly, we have the Recommendations section. Here, the AI has synthesized the AssessmentsPlus output and recommendations with its knowledge of GastroPlus, which is derived from our official documentation, tutorials, and videos. It provides key recommendations, each with a justification based on the simulation data. Furthermore, there is an associated chatbot where you can ask about the recommendations or the simulation as a whole, using this chat box down here. However, you can also automatically prompt the chatbot to ask about how to implement any of these recommendations in GastroPlus, using this Ask Chatbot button. Here, we can see it's providing us with instructions on how to update our enzyme kinetics using the built-in scale factors in the enzyme table. So, if we go back to GastroPlus, we can go ahead and make these recommended changes to increase the metabolic clearance. Navigating to the enzyme kinetics table in the compounds view, I can increase the Vmax scaling factor for both locations of CYP3A4. If we recall, the AUC was over-predicted by about 20%, so I will go ahead and increase each location's Vmax by 10%, which would split the difference between first-pass extraction and systemic clearance. Now, if we go back to AssessmentsPlus and rerun the assessment, we will see that we now get green results, which say that our AUC and Cmax are well predicted. It is important to note here that I did not need to rerun the simulation manually. The simulation assessment will automatically rerun the simulation in the background, ensuring that the assessment is up to date with any changes you may make to the model. However, we can, of course, run the simulation ourselves and see that the results are now a good fit for the observed data.
So this concludes our demo of AssessmentsPlus and AssessmentsPlus AI. Thank you for your attention. We will now be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Andy, for the Q&A.
All right, Noam. Thank you, and thank you to Neil very much for the great presentation and demos today. At present, we don't really have much in either the chat or the Q&A pertaining to today's discussion. If you're open to a more general question about PBPK modeling and simulation and GastroPlus capabilities, I do have a question I could pose.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Two more just came through. Let's start with the last one first. I run some simulations. Some simulations take only 1 second to complete. Some take 4 minutes to complete. Why is that? With the one which takes so long to run simulations, is there any problem with that model? I would guess this would be based on the complexity of the different simulations, but I'm sure you can speak more intelligently to that, Neil or Noam, than I can.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. I mean, first and foremost, it's going to be the length of the simulation. Of course, if you're running a simulation that covers several days, that will take longer to run. But assuming they're both set for the default 24 hours or the same length, then yeah, like Andy said, it really depends on the complexity of the simulation. A simulation that has pretty direct dissolution and no precipitation, it's easier for it to calculate the dissolution and go straight to absorption, so it might not be as much work for the integrator to integrate all the differential equations that go into the underlying parts of the simulation. Whereas you have a drug that's going back and forth, some of it's precipitating and then redissolving, it takes more time for the computer to solve that. So there's nothing inherently wrong if it takes longer. It just means that there's a bit more for it to solve under the hood. And the reason that it takes longer for those is because it takes more smaller time steps to do that solving, which is actually the same reason that some of them run as fast as 1 second, which is much faster than you might have seen in the legacy version of GastroPlus, because we use a more intelligent integrator that can take flexible time steps to balance getting accurate results with running it as fast as possible.
Thank you for that, Noam. This one comes from an individual named Simon Teague. Neil, I don't know if you're familiar with that name or not. The question from Simon is, in the absence of AssessmentsPlus, how would I use the GastroPlus GPT to assess my simulation and get feedback?
So a good question. So you would then obviously be limited to using the GastroPlusChat. So you then have to sort of, it won't be able to assess the simulation without the output, without the AssessmentsPlus module. But you could ask any questions and get some guidance based on, as Noam said, from all of the documentation that we've got with that GastroPlus GPT. So you can still get some help and advice, but it wouldn't be specific to the simulation without you having access to the AssessmentsPlus module.
Okay, great. Thank you, Neil. Is AssessmentsPlus available for biologics?
I'll take that one if you want. Not yet is the short answer to that. So we haven't got biologics in the latest version of GastroPlus in 10.2. Obviously, it's still available in the legacy version 9.9. So the biologics will be transitioning across to a future version of GastroPlus. But really, we've started off with the oral route of administration for small molecules because that covers most of what we're modeling in as a kind of proof of concept. We didn't want to invest lots and lots of time into something if it didn't have that traction. I think looking at the survey today, there was 75% of people that don't think they need technical advice. Well, hopefully we flipped that round today by showing you what's available with the GastroPlus GPT. But it's a stepwise process. So effectively a proof of concept for small molecules following intravenous administration to see if there's kind of an appetite for it and if it helps people. And then we would look to extend that to biologics and to the additional dosage routes as well. So it's on the roadmap, on the plan for the future, but at the moment it's restricted to small molecules, intravenous and oral dosing.
All right. Thank you, Neil. One last question in the Q&A at present. This one's a little broad. In case of nonlinear PK and saturation of absorption, enterocyte metabolism, PGP involvement, precipitation, enterohepatic circulation, multiple things are involved, in using a single dose simulation cannot advise an assessment. What is your thought, please? I think it comes down to using a single dose simulation cannot advise an assessment.
Yes, I mean, I think we didn't go into super detail of all the different fields that are covered in the assessment, but pretty much everything listed there about nonlinear PK and absorption, first pass extraction, transporters, precipitation, EHC, all of that is covered by the assessment. So you will get feedback on that, but that's a pretty valid point that, with a single dose, you're not going to see, what the extent of saturation is, or it might differ between doses. So while in the module within GastroPlus is currently limited to running a single simulation at a time, this is where putting it through AI that's able to synthesize this information can really be helpful. And that's something we're looking at adding to the AssessmentsPlus AI, is being able to accommodate putting in multiple results from multiple assessments in GastroPlus and at the same time and synthesizing that information. In the interim, I mean, that's the type of thing where you can gather the results for each one individually at the moment and ask the general chatbot to help synthesize that information, though.
Just like to add to that it will look at the different components you have of the model, and then if you go and address one particular component, then you can rerun the simulation and see what impact that has had. As you saw from Noam's example, there was multiple ones, and he focused on one which gave the right answer in that case. But if that wasn't and didn't answer the question, didn't give you the improved simulation, you could look at the other feedback. So it will look at all components. But obviously, we need more data, different dose levels if you've got such a complex model.
Okay, great. Lots of good questions coming in. I know this is not the topic of the webinar, but if there is time, can you comment on how similar the prediction results are, for example, for fraction absorbed using GastroPlus X versus 9.8.2, to be more specific? Should I obtain exactly the same numbers, or will there be some differences, and if yes, to what extent?
So do you want me to take a first pass of that, Noam?
Yeah.
The short answer is they should be exactly the same. So if you've created a model in 9.8.2, then you can do a legacy import into GastroPlus 10.2, and you should get exactly the same results. If you were creating them from scratch, so you created it within GastroPlus 10.2, again, it should match 9.8.2 if you've got the same mechanisms in there. So you should get the same result. If you are creating it from scratch, sometimes with people, we're noticing that people aren't getting the simulation settings exactly the same. So you've actually got a different simulation when you would get different results. So legacy import will give you the same results. If you're creating it from scratch and you're not matching it, there's something underlying that's different between those models, because the results should be the same.
Yeah, I can add a bit of a caveat to that, which goes back to that question we had about how long it takes simulations to run and the flexible time steps of the integrator. So it is possible in GPX, because we have the more advanced integrator, that you'll see in some cases, very slight differences in the results based on the time at which it integrates it at each step. But this is really small. I mean, we're talking about like 98.29 versus 98.28. Percent. It's minute numerical differences, but qualitatively the results should be exactly the same if you're using exactly the same model setup, because the underlying science hasn't changed. The underlying equations are still the same.
Just to pick up on that, if you are focusing on that summary view and seeing differences in the parameters, what you can do is load in the simulated profile from the earlier version as observed data in the latest version and see that it overlays nicely, and then it kind of hides those minor differences because of the kind of the different time steps.
All right, thank you both. At present, we don't have any more questions in Q&A, and there's also nothing in the chat. So if no more questions, maybe back over to Jasmine to close out today's webinar.
Thank you all. For any questions we were unable to answer live today, someone from our BD team will reach out to you with answers following the webinar. I hope we'll see you in our next webinar, where our experts will go over PPPSD, how it can be used to fit a product particle size to enable in vivo dissolution prediction for a drug product. I also invite you to go to our website to learn more about GastroPlus and our other software platforms. You can also follow us on social. This webinar has been recorded for playback and will be available on our website and YouTube channel. This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you, everyone.